She thought she could toy with a duke and walk away. But in his world, no one teases a man like him without paying the price. London, 1889, a city glittering with wealth, secrets, and sin. She was bold, untouchable, the only woman who dared laugh in the face of the Duke of Ravensshire, a man whispered to have ruined rivals with a single word. But when her defiance turns into temptation, and temptation into something darker, she'll learn that the Duke doesn't simply seek revenge. He wants her. All of her. If you love stories filled with tension, seduction, and power games, subscribe and turn on the bell icon, so you don't miss a single chapter of this irresistible passion. London, 1889. The night shimmered with secrets. Chandeliers burned like captured stars above the ballroom, and laughter floated through the air like champagne bubbles. Bright, reckless, intoxicating. And then there was her. Alara Winthorne, a woman who didn't belong, and didn't care that she didn't. She walked in wearing crimson silk, not the demure ivory expected of debutantes, and every head turned. Including his, the Duke of Ravensshire, a man whose name was spoken like a warning, whose power could silence a room, or destroy a reputation with a single glance. But Alara, she smiled, slow, dangerous, and met his gaze as if he were any other man. And that was her first mistake. The morning came too soon. London's sky was the color of pewter, heavy with mist, as Alara sat by the window of her townhouse. She still wore last night's crimson gown, its silk creased from the carriage ride home. The memory of his voice clung to her like perfume, smooth, dangerous, impossible to forget. A soft knock broke the silence. Her maid entered, pale and nervous. "A letter for you, miss." Alara took it. The wax seal was black, pressed with a raven's crest. The Duke's mark, she smiled to herself. So the game begins. The letter held only one line: "You owe me an apology." Beneath it, an address, Ravensshire House. Her heart skipped. She had expected fury, maybe scandal, not an invitation. But curiosity was stronger than fear, and pride was stronger than both. By noon, her carriage rattled through the fog-choked streets. The city blurred by, men in top hats, women whispering behind veils, all vanishing into the gray. At the iron gates of Ravensshire House, she hesitated only a moment before stepping down. Inside, silence ruled. The hall smelled of cedar and secrets. She followed a butler through corridors lined with portraits. Generations of men with the same sharp eyes, the same cruel poise. The Duke waited in the library, standing beside the fire. He didn't look up as she entered. "You came," he said simply. "I was curious," she replied. Men who issue threats often don't expect them answered. He turned then, slowly. "That was no threat, Miss Winthorne. It was a warning." Alara crossed her arms. "And what precisely am I being warned about?" He stepped closer. The air between them tightened. "That you've caught my attention. And I'm not a man who lets go easily." Her breath hitched, not from fear, but from the way his voice brushed against her skin. "You overestimate your effect on women, Your Grace. Do I?" His eyes held hers. "Then why are you trembling?" She tried to laugh, but the sound wavered. "Because it's cold," she lied. He smiled, that same slow, knowing smile from the ball. "Then allow me to warm you." He reached past her, feeding a log into the fire. The flames flared, painting his face in gold and shadow. "Tell me," he murmured, "why did you mock me last night?" "Because everyone else was afraid to." "And are you still unafraid?" She met his gaze. Completely, a beat of silence. Then his voice dropped, almost gentle. "Liar!" The word slid between them like a spark. Before she could answer, he turned away. "Leave," he said. "For now." She lingered at the doorway, her pulse racing. "Should I expect another letter?" His answer came without turning. "You should expect consequences." Alara smiled faintly. "Good, I was growing bored." And with that, she was gone, her footsteps echoing through Ravensshire House, leaving behind the scent of challenge and the promise of something far more dangerous than revenge. The next day unfolded like a dare. Rain whispered against the windows of Alara's townhouse, as she reread the Duke's letter for the 10th time. She told herself she wasn't intrigued, that it was all a game, a dance of pride and wit. But the truth was simpler. She couldn't stop thinking about him. His voice, his eyes. The way he'd said liar, like he already knew every secret she was trying to hide. By afternoon, a second carriage appeared at her door. Black, polished, silent. The messenger handed her another note. You wish to play? Then come to Ravenshire tomorrow. Noon. Employment awaits. Employment. Alara laughed aloud. The Duke wanted to trap her, to force her into his world on his terms. He'd have to try harder. Still, she went. Ravenshire House loomed even darker under the storm. She was ushered inside and left standing in a high-ceilinged study filled with maps, books, and firelight. He entered without ceremony, dressed in black again, power tailored into every line of his body. Miss Winthorne, he said. You arrive promptly. I admire that. I'm punctual, she replied, not obedient. The hint of a smile touched his lips. We'll see. He circled her slowly, every step deliberate, as though studying a puzzle he meant to solve. I find myself in need of an assistant, he said. Someone sharp. Someone who knows how to speak without saying too much. I assume that's a compliment? It's a test. She tilted her chin. And if I fail? Then you'll learn what happens to those who waste my time. She should have left then. Any sensible woman would have. But Alara wasn't sensible. She was fascinated. What exactly would my duties be? She asked. He stopped beside her, close enough that she felt the heat from his body. To keep me company, to keep my secrets, and occasionally, to remind me what defiance looks like. Her breath caught. And in return? In return, he said softly, I'll give you what no one else can. Power. Silence stretched between them, thick and dangerous. She wanted to laugh at his arrogance. Instead, she whispered, I don't belong to anyone's game, Your Grace. He looked at her then, truly looked, like a man realizing he might have met his match. Oh, you do, he said. You just haven't read the rules yet. He moved toward the door. You'll begin tomorrow. Wear something practical. I dislike distractions, Alara smiled faintly. Then perhaps I'll wear red again. His steps paused, the slightest turn of his head. You're playing with fire. I told you, she said, her voice low, steady. I hate the cold. The door shut behind him. And for the first time, Alara understood. This wasn't simply a flirtation. It was war. He approached her near the grand staircase, black-gloved hands behind his back, voice smooth as aged whiskey. You've been staring at me all night, Miss Winthorne. She didn't flinch. Only because I couldn't believe the rumors, she said. That the mighty Duke of Ravenshire actually existed. A murmur rippled through the nearby crowd. He leaned closer. And what do you believe now? That power makes men predictable. Her words hit like a slap, hidden behind a smile. He didn't move, didn't blink. But his eyes darkened, not with anger, but something sharper. Interest. Careful, Miss Winthorne, he said. You're playing with fire. Good, she whispered. I hate the cold. The orchestra swelled. The Duke stepped back, nodding once. Then I'll make sure you burn beautifully. Later that night, while the last waltz faded and the guests drifted away, a letter arrived at her carriage, sealed with the Ravenshire crest. No words, only an address, and one line beneath it, You owe me an apology. She laughed softly, because she had no idea. The next morning, Ravenshire House woke to a storm. Rain pelted the windows like silver needles, wind rattling the iron gates. Inside, Alara stood in the vast kitchen, dressed as instructed, dark trousers, fitted blouse, hair tied back. Practical, unremarkable. And yet, she knew every glance of the staff betrayed their curiosity about the bold, beautiful woman who dared to enter the Duke's world. He appeared silently, as though the storm had carried him here. Alara, he said, voice low, commanding, but with the barest hint of amusement. Today begins your... Instruction. She bristled. Yet she followed him through hallways lined with centuries of family portraits, their eyes seeming to judge every step she took. He stopped in a study lined with books and maps. He gestured to a chair. "Sit," Alara obeyed, though her chin remained high. "You will learn the rules of my house," he continued, "because you are in my world now. And in my world, nothing is accidental." She raised an eyebrow. "Accident? The people around you are not your friends. They are tools or obstacles. Watch closely." He moved to the window, studying the gardens drenched in rain. "And above all, no one teases the Duke without consequences." That apology would cost her everything. She felt a thrill like a spark she shouldn't touch, but did anyway. "Then I suppose I'll need to learn quickly," she said, teasing yet steady. He turned, his eyes catching hers in the firelight. "Good. Intelligence without caution is useless. Curiosity without fear. Dangerous." Her lips curved. "Sounds like you're describing me." A shadow of a smile touched his mouth. "Exactly." He circled the room, hand brushing the spines of old books. "You will start with small tasks. Observations. Learning the people. Understanding their motives." She nodded. Every word was a challenge wrapped in authority. "And," he added, voice softening just enough to make her pulse skip, "you will follow one rule above all. Never forget who holds power here." Alara leaned back in the chair, pretending to consider. "And if I forget?" she asked. He stepped closer, the space between them tight with unspoken tension. "Then I will remind you, personally." She shivered, not from cold, but anticipation. The storm outside roared louder, as if it understood the storm brewing between them. "All right," she said finally, standing. "Teach me then. I'm ready for your rules." He regarded her for a long, silent moment. "Good," he said, "because I don't give second chances." And as she left the study, every step echoing in the marble hall, Alara realized something terrifying and thrilling. She wasn't merely surviving the Duke's world. She was stepping willingly into it, and for the first time she wondered, who would truly control whom? Night fell over Ravenshire House, and the storm from the morning had given way to a heavy silence, broken only by the distant roll of thunder. Alara wandered the halls, curiosity tugging at her as fiercely as pride. She was supposed to be learning the Duke's rules, observing, waiting, but her feet betrayed her, leading her toward the study once more. The door creaked as she opened it, almost expecting him to be there. He wasn't. Instead, the room was empty, warm from the fire he had lit hours before. Books were scattered across the large oak desk, papers stacked in meticulous piles. Maps of London and the surrounding countryside were pinned to the walls, some marked with careful red lines. Ilara's fingers itched. She wanted to touch, to read, to uncover. A dangerous thrill raced through her. She knew she shouldn't, yet the temptation was irresistible. A soft rustle caught her attention. She froze, heart beating faster. From behind a stack of papers, a small leather-bound journal peeked out, almost as if it had been waiting for her. She picked it up. The leather was worn, edges softened from use. On the first page, elegant handwriting sprawled across the parchment. "Power is never given freely. It is taken, or it is lost." Alara's lips curved into a slow smile. It was one of the Duke's sayings she had overheard in passing. And now, it seemed, she held a piece of him in her hands. Her eyes scanned the pages. Names, dates, dealings, whispers of alliances, betrayals, debts owed and collected. Each entry revealed a man who was as cunning and ruthless as rumors suggested, but also human, vulnerable, clever, calculating. A sudden sound made her jump. She hadn't noticed him return. "I see you found my little secrets," the Duke's voice said, low, even, but carrying a dangerous edge. She froze, journal clutched against her chest. She started, but he stepped closer, his gaze sharp. "Curiosity can be rewarding," he said, his voice softening ever so slightly. "Or it can be dangerous." Alara met his eyes, defiance flashing through her. "I think I can handle it." He didn't respond with words. Instead, he circled her slowly, as he always did, his presence magnetic, suffocating, impossible to ignore. "Very well," he said finally. "Then consider this your first lesson. Knowledge is power. but only if you know when to use it. Her pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the way he was watching her. "You play with fire," she whispered, "and you fan the flames," he replied. For a long moment they stood in silence. The storm outside faded into a drizzle, but the storm between them had only just begun. Elara set the journal down carefully, but she knew she would return to it. Secrets in the study, secrets of the Duke, and perhaps secrets of herself she hadn't yet admitted. The sky darkened again by late afternoon, heavy clouds blotting out the sun. Elara was leaving Ravenshire House after a long day of lessons in observation, intrigue, and the subtle power games the Duke insisted she master. She barely noticed the rain at first, small drops tapping against her cloak, until the heavens opened. Drenching the cobblestone streets of London, she ran, heart racing, heels clattering against the wet stones. And then she saw him, the Duke, black coat, collar up, hat shielding his eyes, but still. Unmistakably him. He was standing near her carriage, holding the door, immovable, calm, as if he belonged to the storm itself. "Elara," he said, voice carrying over the rain, "you shouldn't be out here alone." "I'm perfectly fine," she replied, though her hair plastered to her face and her gloves were soaked. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming even from a few feet away. "You've never been good at caution." She laughed, breathless, defiant. "Neither have you." The rain was relentless now, soaking them both, and yet somehow it felt intimate, as if the world had narrowed to only the two of them. "Get in," he said abruptly, gesturing to the carriage. She hesitated, pride warring with instinct. "You don't command me." "I'm not commanding," he said, voice dropping low, almost a growl. "I'm offering." Her chest tightened as he stepped even closer, and her hands shook, though she told herself it was from cold. Finally, she allowed herself to slide into the carriage. He followed, standing close enough that their shoulders brushed. Inside, the warmth of the carriage contrasted sharply with the chill of the storm. "You provoke me too much," he murmured, voice low, dangerous. "And you're enjoying it," she shot back, eyes sparkling, wet strands of hair sticking to her forehead. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her, a calculating calm masking the storm behind his eyes. "You're reckless," he said finally, "and I admire that. But you must learn restraint." She swallowed hard, aware of the tension coiling between them. "And what if I don't want to?" she asked. He leaned slightly closer, just enough that she could feel his breath. "Then I'll make you want to," he whispered. The carriage rolled through the wet streets, shadows flickering across their faces from the lamps outside. Neither spoke again, yet every glance, every breath, was a conversation charged with unspoken promises and threats alike. By the time they reached her home, neither of them wanted to move. To break the fragile electric connection, he opened the door for her, and she stepped out, rain dripping from her cloak, heart still pounding. "You survived the storm," he said. "And you?" she asked, daring to meet his gaze. "I did," he replied, lips quirking into that faint, dangerous smile. "But I think we've only begun." Elara walked inside, soaked, exhilarated, and more intrigued than ever. The rain had passed, but the storm between them had only just begun. The fire in the Duke's study cast flickering shadows across the walls, making the room feel smaller, more intimate. Elara stood near the window, watching the rain-drenched streets below, though her mind wasn't on the city. It was on him. He leaned against the mantel, arms crossed, studying her with a gaze that cut deeper than any blade. "Why do you provoke me so?" he asked softly, almost a whisper, yet every word held weight. She turned to meet his eyes, fierce and unyielding. "Because you're infuriating," she said. "And yet, I can't look away." He took a step closer, and she felt the heat radiating from him, filling the space between them with tension that was nearly unbearable. "Infuriating," he repeated, voice low. "Or irresistible." Her breath hitched. "You think I don't know what you're trying to do?" she challenged, though her heart betrayed her with every beat. He chuckled softly, a dangerous throaty sound that made her knees weak. No, he said. I'm not trying. I'm admitting it. I don't want revenge anymore. Her eyes widened. Then what do you want? He stepped even closer, close enough that she could see the slight tremble of his jaw as he fought for control. I want you, he confessed, voice rough with something between need and restraint. Not your apologies. Not your games. I want you. All of you. Alara's heart raced, a storm of disbelief and longing tearing through her. You, she started, but words failed her. He reached out, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering longer than necessary. I've been patient, he said softly, almost tenderly. I've allowed your defiance, your teasing, because I wanted to see if you were worth it. And now I know you are. You always have been. Her pulse thudded violently in her ears. You want me? She whispered, unsure if she dared to hope. Yes, he admitted, closer now, his presence enveloping her. Not as a conquest, not as a game, but because I can't imagine wanting anyone else. Alara swallowed, emotions twisting in a whirlwind of desire, fear, and incredulity. You're serious? Completely. The air between them charged with heat, thick with unspoken tension. You realize this changes everything, she said softly, almost to herself. He nodded, eyes dark and intense. I know. And I don't care. Whatever this is between us, it isn't about power. It's about you. Only you. She felt herself leaning forward, drawn to him despite every instinct screaming caution. I don't know if I... He closed the distance, just enough for her to feel the warmth of his body, the intoxicating pull of his presence. Don't think, he whispered. Feel. For a long moment, they stood there, hearts hammering, breaths mingling, the world outside forgotten. And in that moment, Alara realized something terrifying, exhilarating, and impossible to ignore. The Duke of Ravenshire no longer sought revenge. He sought her. The morning light spilled weakly through the curtains of Alara's room, but it did little to brighten her mood. A letter had arrived at dawn. Her hands trembled as she opened it, eyes scanning the words faster than she could process. Her brother, indebted. To the Duke, she sank into the chair, cold dread flooding her veins. It wasn't just a simple debt. It was a trap. Every step she had taken to defy him, every spark of pride she had displayed, had been watched, calculated, leveraged. A sharp knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Miss Winthorne? The maid's voice was tentative. The Duke. He requested your presence. Alara's stomach twisted. Had he discovered what she now feared? Or worse, had he orchestrated it all along? The carriage ride was silent. The rain had returned, gentle this time, washing the streets clean but doing nothing to cleanse the guilt burning in her chest. When she arrived at Ravenshire House, he was waiting in the hall, composed as always, though his eyes betrayed nothing. Good morning, he said, voice calm, almost casual. Morning, she replied, her voice tight. He motioned for her to follow him into the study. Once inside, he closed the door with a quiet finality. You received my message, he said. Alara's heart thudded painfully. How much did you know? She demanded, struggling to keep her voice steady. He moved closer, placing a hand on the desk between them, leaning in slightly. Enough to see how you'd react, he said. And, her hands clenched into fists, enough to know. You've been manipulating me. He didn't flinch. Instead, he regarded her with those piercing eyes that always seemed to see straight through her. Manipulation, perhaps, but only to protect you. And your brother. She took a sharp breath. You used me as bait? He sighed, a mixture of frustration and regret. Not bait, guidance. You have fire, Alara, intelligence, courage. And I needed to know if you could handle the consequences of your own choices. Her chest tightened. You watched me, tested me, all while my family was at risk? Yes, he admitted, voice soft, almost reluctant. And yet, you didn't fail. Not once. Alara stared at him, torn between fury, betrayal, and something far more dangerous, admiration. You could have destroyed us, she whispered. Perhaps, he said, stepping closer, eyes locked on hers. But I didn't, because I knew eventually you'd understand, and perhaps you'd even forgive me. Her pulse raced, desire and anger warring inside her. I don't know if I can, she said honestly. He leaned just enough to let the warmth of his presence brush against her. Then let me earn it, he said quietly. Not as a duke, not as a threat, but as a man who can't let you go. And in that moment, Alara realized the truth. The line between betrayal and desire was thinner than she had ever imagined. And crossing it would change everything. Night had fallen over Ravenshire House, and the halls were quiet, heavy with the lingering storm outside. Alara moved cautiously through the corridors, her mind still reeling from the revelation of her brother's debt and the Duke's manipulation. Every shadow seemed alive, every whisper of wind a reminder that nothing here was simple, and nothing here was safe. She paused outside the library, drawn by the faint glow of candlelight. Inside, the Duke waited, standing tall, hands clasped behind his back. When he saw her, a flicker of something unreadable passed over his face. Desire, restraint, frustration. Alara, he said, voice low, magnetic. You shouldn't wander these halls alone. I like danger, she replied, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. And you seem to enjoy creating it. He stepped closer, the space between them charged, electric. And yet, he murmured, you come to me anyway. Her breath caught. She began. But he silenced her with a look, sharp and knowing. Without another word, he closed the distance, his hand brushing hers as he reached for her cheek. Alara froze, caught in the gravity of his presence, the heat of his gaze, the inevitability of the moment. Then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't hesitant. It was claiming, a declaration of intent, a promise wrapped in danger and fire. Her body responded instinctively, a shiver running through her, and for a brief suspended heartbeat, the world outside ceased to exist. When he finally pulled back, the air between them trembled. You tempt me, he whispered, voice husky, and I do not forgive easily. I wasn't asking for forgiveness, she replied, lips still tingling from the kiss. He studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes shadowed with a dangerous mix of amusement and longing. You will learn, he said, that there are consequences to what you provoke. Alara's pulse raced. And what if I like consequences? She dared, stepping closer despite the risk. A slow, knowing smile curved his lips. Then you will learn the true cost, he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face, of crossing the Duke of Ravenshire. Her stomach twisted with anticipation and fear. The kiss had changed everything, erased boundaries, ignited desires she couldn't control. And she realized with both terror and thrill that this curse he spoke of was not just his power over her, it was the power of her own heart, willingly ensnared. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows. Inside, the fire flickered, echoing the storm between them. Alara knew one thing with perfect clarity. Nothing could remain the same. Not her. Not him. Not the rules of this dangerous, intoxicating game. The morning after the kiss, London felt colder. Alara walked the streets wrapped in her cloak, yet the chill in the air was nothing compared to the fire still burning in her veins. She tried to think clearly, tried to remind herself of the rules, of caution. But the Duke had already rewritten every one of them. By noon, rumors began to swirl. Whispers of the Duke and the fiery woman who had dared to challenge him reached ears that were better left ignorant. Alara knew her reputation was fragile, hanging by a thread. One misstep, and society would not forgive. When she returned to Ravenshire House, she found the Duke waiting in the study, as always, his presence filling the room, suffocating, intoxicating. "You've been noticed," he said simply. Alara's heart sank. "I expected as much. People talk." He moved closer, voice low, dangerous. "Then you know the price of desire, Alara." Her pulse quickened. "And what price would you demand?" He stepped around the desk, closing the distance between them. "Public shame," he said, gaze locking with hers. "Or surrender." Her breath caught. The meaning was clear. "To surrender to you?" she whispered, part disbelief, part longing. "Yes," he said, voice smooth, deliberate, controlled. "I can protect you, but only if you claim what is yours. What I want you to claim." She swallowed hard. The choice was terrifying, impossible, yet magnetic. "You're asking me to give myself entirely?" He nodded once, slowly. "In public. To the world that would otherwise ruin you. To me as mine, no half measures, no secrets." Alara's mind raced. To refuse was to risk humiliation, disgrace. To accept was to bind herself to a man whose touch, whose gaze, whose very existence consumed her. "And if I refuse?" she asked, voice trembling, hiding more than she admitted. "Then you face the consequences," he said, dark, resolute. "Society will punish you as it always punishes the bold, and I will not protect you." She swallowed, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed to flee, to resist, to maintain the fragile independence she had always cherished. But another part of her, the part that had felt the storm, the fire, the kiss, knew she could never truly escape him. Finally, she lifted her chin, eyes blazing with defiance and desire. "Very well," she said, steady, deliberate. "I will claim it, on my terms. But know this, I do not bow lightly." A slow smile spread across his face, a mixture of triumph and admiration. "Good," he said softly. "I would have it no other way." The storm outside had passed, leaving the streets washed clean, glistening under the afternoon sun. Inside, the storm between them had only intensified, consuming pride, will, and desire alike. Alara knew the price of desire, and she knew deep down she was willing to pay it. The grand ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers, casting golden light across the polished floors. Laughter, music, and whispered gossip filled the air, each sound a thread weaving the intricate web of London society. Alara entered, head held high, her crimson gown flowing like liquid fire with every step. All eyes turned, some in admiration, others in judgment. And at the center of it all stood the Duke of Ravenshire, watching her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. Whispers traveled faster than the waltz. "That's the woman. The one daring enough to defy the Duke? She'll ruin him, or herself." Alara smiled faintly, letting the murmurs wash over her like distant wind. She was prepared. She had survived the storm, the manipulation, the kiss. Yet nothing could prepare her for the thrill of walking into the lion's den. Fully aware that every glance carried judgment, every whisper carried consequence. The Duke approached, his presence commanding, magnetic. "Alara," he said, voice low, almost private, though the crowd surrounded them. "You are bold even here, reckless." "And you," she replied, meeting his dark gaze without flinching, "enjoy it far too much." A faint smile curved his lips. "You are correct. But tonight, your audacity may be rewarded, or punished." He extended a hand. She took it, their fingers brushing, sending a spark of electricity through her. As the orchestra swelled, he led her onto the dance floor, every movement calculated, controlled, yet wild with the tension between them. Around them, society watched in fascination and horror. Every step, every turn, every subtle touch was scrutinized, dissected and whispered about. Alara felt their eyes, but she only focused on him, the Duke who had both tormented and enthralled her. Mid-dance, a rival whispered a rumor in her ear, eyes glittering with malice. "He will ruin you, and you will thank him for it." Alara laughed softly, the sound like wind over the rain. She knew the truth. It wasn't ruin she feared. It was surrender, and she was already on the edge of giving in. The Duke leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. "Do you know what people say about us?" he murmured. "Does it matter?" She replied, heart racing. He smirked, voice low, teasing. "It matters, because I am not finished with you. Not publicly, not privately, and tonight, everyone will see it." Her breath hitched as the music reached its crescendo. Every eye in the room watched them, every whisper a dagger, every glance a spark, and Alara realized with a mix of fear and thrill that she was no longer just a player in this dangerous game. She was the center of it. The storm, the fire, and the scandal all belonged to her now. The final notes of the waltz lingered in the air, but the heat between them did not fade. She knew one thing with certainty: nothing would ever be the same again. And society's judgment was the least of her worries. The morning after the ball of scandal, Ravenshire House felt unusually still. The echoes of whispers and scandal lingered like smoke, wrapping every hallway, every shadow, every painting in tension. Alara moved through the corridors, her crimson gown replaced by a simpler dress, yet her presence remained impossible to ignore. She had survived the public scrutiny, survived the Duke's tests, survived the storm. But she did not yet realize the storm had other plans. A servant approached quietly, bowing low. "Miss Winthorne, a visitor has arrived." He insists on seeing the Duke immediately. Her brow furrowed. "Who is it?" The servant hesitated. He says, "He is someone from the Duke's past." Alara's stomach tightened. She had known the Duke's reputation, his power, his danger, but the past was unknown territory. A chill ran down her spine. Moments later, the Duke appeared, dark eyes shadowed with concern she had never seen before. "Alara," he said softly, "stay here." But she moved with him anyway, curiosity and fear warring inside her. The visitor waited in the drawing room, a tall figure, posture straight, eyes calculating. When the Duke stepped closer, recognition flashed. "Cecilia," he murmured, voice low, tense. Alara's heart skipped. Another woman, a rival? The tension in the room thickened instantly. Cecilia's eyes flicked to her, sharp, assessing. "And you must be the one who has captured the Duke's attention," she said, her tone polite but cold, like ice sliding across steel. Alara didn't falter. She met the gaze evenly, lips pressing into a thin line. "I am, and I do not intend to let it go." The Duke's jaw tightened. "Cecilia," he said slowly, "you know why you are here." "We do not speak of the past." She smiled faintly, dangerously. Perhaps it is time the past was spoken of. Perhaps it is time she knew the truth. Her gaze lingered on Alara, with a warning hidden beneath the civility. Alara felt the weight of every unspoken word. Secrets, betrayals, wounds that had not healed, and for the first time, she realized the Duke's power extended beyond the present. He was a man shaped by history, by lovers, enemies, and debts no one dared to name. The Duke stepped closer to her, placing a protective hand near her arm. "You do not understand," he murmured, low, almost private. "This is dangerous for you. You've seen only what I allow, my past. Can destroy more than your pride." Alara lifted her chin. "Then let me see it. If I am to be yours, I must see everything, shadows and fire alike." He looked at her, a storm of emotion in his eyes, possessiveness, fear, longing. "Very well," he said finally. "But know this. Once the past is revealed, nothing will be safe. Not your heart, not your life, not even your defiance." And in that charged silence, Alara knew the game had changed. She had survived storms, kisses, and public scrutiny, but the true test had only just begun. The night air was thick with smoke before she even reached the gates. Alara's heart pounded as she rushed toward Ravenshire House, the sky above painted with orange and black flames. A fire. And not just any fire. It consumed the East Wing, the very wing that held the Duke's private study, and perhaps secrets too dangerous to burn. The Duke was already there, standing amid the chaos, face shadowed by smoke and determination. "Alara!" he shouted over the roar of the flames. "You shouldn't be here!" But she had come. Her defiance, her fire matched his own. "I won't stay away," she called back, her voice steady despite the heat licking her face. He turned, eyes dark, scanning her. Relief flickered briefly before vanishing into controlled fury. "Then stay close," he barked. "And do exactly as I say." Flames licked the grand doors as they moved inside, the heat unbearable. Servants scrambled, shouting, carrying buckets of water, fighting a battle they could not possibly win alone. And yet, amidst the chaos, the Duke was calm, commanding, calculating, precise. "Ilara," he said, grabbing her hand and pulling her behind a pillar. "You must listen. Stay low. Watch me. Do not act rashly." Her pulse raced, not from fear alone, but from the electric tension between them. She nodded, letting him lead, every step measured, eyes never leaving his. A crash. A beam fell nearby, splintering into fire. She ducked instinctively, heart hammering. "You're reckless," he muttered. But there was admiration beneath the warning. They moved room to room, salvaging what could be saved, protecting what must not be lost. The Duke's hand brushed hers more than once, intentional or not. It was impossible to tell. Every glance, every movement carried the promise of danger and desire. Finally, they reached the study. The fire had claimed much, but a small trunk survived. He opened it carefully, revealing ledgers, letters, and personal journals. Secrets preserved, saved from the flames. Ilara watched him, noting the precision of his hands, the fierce protectiveness in his gaze. "You risk everything," she said softly, awed. He turned to her then, face close, eyes dark as smoke. "And you," he said low, "follow me into the fire. And yet, you still provoke me, still challenge me. You're as dangerous as these flames." Her pulse quickened. "And you," she whispered, "still enthrall me, still hold me captive, without chains." He studied her, a slow, deliberate movement. Then without a word, he pulled her close. The fire roared around them, but the world narrowed to the heat between their bodies, the tension they could no longer deny. The blaze outside mirrored the fire inside her heart. For the first time, Ilara understood. Danger, desire, and loyalty were inseparable in this house. And in the Duke's world, the flames would always test them both. The fire had been contained, but its smoke lingered, curling through the halls like a ghost of what had nearly been lost. Ilara walked carefully, the Duke's presence close behind her, his hand brushing hers just enough to remind her he was there, protective, dangerous, insistent. The night was silent now, but Ravenshire House felt haunted. Every shadow seemed deeper, every corner whispered secrets, and every glance between them carried weight too heavy to ignore. He stopped suddenly, turning to face her. "Ilara," he said, voice low, serious, almost vulnerable. Tonight was more than a test of courage. It was a test of trust, and now, you have a choice, her brow furrowed. "A choice?" "Yes," he said, stepping closer, the flicker of candlelight catching the sharp line of his jaw. "You can stay in the light, follow the rules, obey the expectations. Or," he tilted his head slightly, eyes dark, intense, compelling. "Or you can step into the shadows with me, walk my path with all its danger, its intrigue, its desire, and never turn back." Her heart raced. Shadows, the unknown, the thrill of surrender. "Walk with you?" she whispered. "And risk everything?" "Everything," he confirmed, voice husky, magnetic. "But you will also gain everything. Power, freedom, passion, and me." Ilara's pulse thundered in her chest. The choice was impossible, terrifying, intoxicating. To step into the shadows was to surrender everything she had ever known. Yet the fire inside her, the fire he had awakened, demanded she follow. "You make it sound inevitable," she said, her voice trembling, though not with fear. He smirked faintly, taking her hand and letting it rest in his. "I do not make it sound," he said softly. "I make it truth. The moment you crossed my path, your fate was sealed." Her breath caught, desire and apprehension twisting into something she could not name. She began, but he silenced her with a quiet intensity. "No words," he whispered. "Actions will decide. Your choice. Now." She looked into his eyes, searching for deceit, for hesitation. But there was none. Only power, danger, and a promise she could not resist. Finally, she drew a slow, steady breath, letting courage, curiosity, and longing guide her. "I choose the shadows," she said, her voice strong, unwavering. A smile, slow and dangerous, curved his lips. "Good," he said, "because once you step into them, there is no turning back." The night seemed to bend around them, shadows lengthening and swallowing the halls. Alara felt it, the thrill, the fear, the undeniable pull of the Duke's world. And in that moment, she realized the truth. She was no longer merely surviving. She was embracing it. Every danger, every secret, every passionate, intoxicating moment belonged to her now. The first light of dawn seeped through the windows of Ravenshire House, soft and golden, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Alara stood at the edge of the balcony, the cool morning air brushing her face, heart still racing from the choices of the night before. She had chosen the shadows, chosen him, chosen the dangerous, intoxicating path of fire, desire, and power. And now, there was no turning back. Behind her, the Duke appeared silently, his presence as commanding as ever, yet softer somehow in the quiet morning. "Alara," he said, voice low, almost reverent. "You made your choice." She turned to face him, crimson hair catching the light, eyes shining with resolve and longing. "I did," she said, steady, unwavering. "And I don't regret it." He studied her, dark eyes searching, measuring, admiring. "You understand what it means, don't you?" he murmured. "This world we've chosen, it will test us, push us, consume us, but it will also bind us. Forever." Her pulse quickened, every nerve alive with anticipation. "I understand," she whispered. "And I embrace it. All of it. You, me, Ravenshire, the fire, the danger, the passion." He stepped closer, the air between them charged, electric. "Then you are mine," he said softly but with absolute certainty. "As I am yours." For the first time there were no games, no tests, no manipulation. Only two souls intertwined, drawn together by desire, respect, and the undeniable force that had brought them to this moment. He reached out, taking her hand, and she did not hesitate. Their fingers intertwined, warmth spreading, hearts aligning. "You are bold, reckless, and everything I could never resist," he whispered, lips brushing hers in a promise rather than a challenge. Alara smiled faintly, leaning into him, letting herself feel what she had feared yet craved all along. "And you," she murmured, "are everything I've dared to want, and more." The morning sun bathed them in light, a new day beginning. Yet nothing could erase the storm that had brought them here. They had faced fire, scandal, betrayal, and desire. They had survived, defied, and chosen each other. And in that choice, they were truly bound. Not by rules, not by manipulation, not by fear, but by the dangerous, intoxicating, undeniable force of their hearts. He pressed his forehead to hers, quiet, intimate, unyielding. "Forever bound, Alara, in every shadow, in every flame, together." Her lips curved into a smile, heart full, eyes bright. "Yes," she whispered, "forever." And in that moment, Ravenshire House held its breath, as if even the ancient walls understood. Two souls, fearless, defiant, and utterly entwined, bound not by fear, but by fire, passion, and love. The story may have reached its final chapter, but the world of passion, intrigue, and danger is far from over. If you've been captivated by Alara and the Duke, if you want to follow every twist, every storm, every forbidden desire, don't miss a single moment of the next adventure. Subscribe now and turn on the bell icon, so you'll be the first to experience every chapter, every secret, and every thrilling moment as it unfolds. The city lights may fade, but the story, our story, is just beginning. Subscribe now and step back into the shadows with us.